we're looking at this next section, which has a ton of subsections in it. Let me explain. For Visual Flight Rules VFR terms and symbols, remote pilots, so us, need to be familiar with the following information, and this is from the FAA Aeronautical Chart User's Guide website. So this document I'll have in the description below the like button. This is a link, and I'll have this link specifically linked, so you don't have to go through this, find this, and then go to it. But anyways, this will be linked. You're going to want to open this link. From there, we need to study all information in the VFR terms tab, the following sections: aeronautical chart symbols, airports, airspace, navigation, procedural information, chart limits, culture, hydrography, and relief. We need to study all of these. So if you open this link, it'll take you to something like this. And this is basically publishing guides for VFR, IFR, terminal procedures, chart supplements. So the chart supplements are going to look something like this. You can download and read these. Terminal procedures and airport diagrams are here. We have IFR routes, but the FAA wants us to pay attention to VFR. So this is another subsection, but it's from this right here. You can see there's a ton of sections in here, and I'm going to briefly go over it because you do need to know these. Maybe not everything, but I'll touch on the important things. So I'm going to have this guide as well as the original notes, as always, linked in the description. First off, we need to know everything in the explanation of VFR terms and symbols. I'm going to break this up into multiple videos. In this video, we're going to be going over water features to land features. So these three first topics are going to be here. Important terms that you're going to need to know are Integration Air Committee, which is just the IAC, the Federal Aviation Administration, which is FAA, and Department of Defense, which is DoD, just some acronyms. Water features are pretty important. Two types of colors are used. We have a lighter blue, and that's for open water, so that'll be like more coastal, more ocean, and darker blue, and that's for like inland water. So that'll be for like lakes and everything that we have in the United States. However, really large lakes may be represented with a light blue, so that's just something to keep in mind. Now let's look at some land features. So this is terrain and obstructions. We use different color tints to show elevation, and this is relative to sea level. So if you look to the right here, this is going to be the tints that we use to describe land in like our sectional charts. Obstacles less than 1,000 feet, AGL, so look over here, are going to be represented by a little triangle. So if it's less than 1,000 feet, yeah, a little triangle. Obstacles greater than this are going to be a taller triangle. So it's pretty easy to remember. Man-made features used by FAA, look to the left right here, like checkpoints or indications of high volume activity, are represented with like a black structure. It's going to have the elevation next to it as well. Typically the obstacles will too. The big number up top is always going to be MSL, which is mean sea level. That's how high it is above the sea level. And not always, but usually it'll also have a number in parentheses below it, and that is the AGL. They're nice enough to include that. So you have MSL, and then you have AGL underneath it, just for reference. In high density areas, sometimes we'll have obstacles grouped together like this, or possibly something like this, though these are concentrated obstacles, which we'll get to in a second. But we'll have obstacles grouped together like this, and that is just to avoid confusion in high density areas. Only the tallest obstacle will be represented. If you see something like this, where we have a UC next to it, that means under construction. Look a little bit below here, we have concentrated obstructions, and they're going to be grouped together. Now we will discuss MEF, which is the maximum elevation figure. You can see right here we have an example of 12.5, and that represents 12,500 feet. I'll show you how to calculate this right now. It's pretty simple, but pretty important. So MEF is the maximum elevation figure, and again, it represents the highest elevation of something in a specific quadrant. And quadrants, if you know how to read a sectional chart, are 30-minute intervals. So you have a block of 30 minutes by 30 minutes, and that would look something like this. So it's surrounded by this little box right here. This is an entire quadrant. So let's learn how to read an MEF. Again, maximum elevation figure. How do we do this? Well, there's two different types. There's an MEF for man-made objects, and there's a MEF for natural objects. The MEF for man-made obstacles is where we add a 100 to the height. So look at this example right here. It's pretty good. You add 100 to the height, and then you're going to round that to the nearest 100. Then you omit the last two zeros, and that'll give you your number. So for something like this, it's going to be 2,800 feet, and this is mean sea level. it's always going to be mean sea level. And sometimes you'll get the AGL, but mean sea level is a thing to pay attention to. It's the important one. Now, let's talk about the maximum elevation figure for natural objects. So you're going to want to take the elevation again. You're going to add 100, but this time there's an extra step for our maximum elevation figure. You're also going to add 200 after that. From there, you'll round to the nearest 100, and then you can omit the last two zeros. So this one would be 13,500 feet for our current maximum elevation figure. Last part of this section is just land features. So we'll have like mountain passes. You can see this H for like a helicopter pad here. You have this flag, so this denotes something for the FAA. There's a ton of different symbols, but a mountain pass is represented by these two lines that are like two parentheses back to back. In the next section, we'll be looking at radio aids to navigation. In this section, we covered maximum elevation figures, water features, and land features, as well as some important terminology and slight math that you'll be able to use.